welcome everyone. Well done for getting here bang on time. We've got a few people still coming on, which is great. So this is our second session with Alan and Overy. Last week we had a session looking into the different technologies involved at the company and what they've been getting involved with and how that's having an impact on their business. It's really good to see that 38% of you were actually on that session last week, so well done. And by the way, if you do continue, the 38% of you to continue on these webinars, there's a bonus webinar at the end for people who keep turning up to these webinars. So well done. I've also asked, and I'm going to share the results in a second, do any roles not exist in Alan and Overy? So far, so good. 3% have said that events do not happen at Alan and Overy in terms of a department, but an overwhelming 97% have said that they all exist. So potentially, well done to everybody there. And in terms of year group, I'll just end this poll now and just share it, just so everyone can see that. In terms of year groups, so we've got 76% are year 12s, 22% are year 13s, and we have a year 11. Welcome to that one year 11 who's on here as well. So there we are in terms of kicking us off. Good stuff. So let's have a look at what we've got in store for today. Before I introduce our panelists, I'll just let you know a few quick things. So how to communicate during the session. Then we'll introduce our panelists, understanding their journey to where they are at the moment. And then we'll look into the main content. The main content today, guys, is question and answer. So finding out from the different departments that we've got speaking today and understanding what their roles are and how it plays a big part in Alan and Overy, which is, of course, a law firm. Then we'll go into Q&A. So you can ask questions pretty much whenever you want, okay? And this is how you can do it. The Q&A box, so you'll see that at the bottom or at the top of your screen on Zoom. Just type in a question there. And then that means that we can all see it, and I'll make sure that we get to it throughout the session. The chat box, you can use if we ask you any questions, for example, what year group you might be in, and you can put that into the chat box so we can all see it. If you are using the chat box, make sure you send it to everybody so we can all see the content. But if you do want your question answered, put it in the Q&A box because we make sure we get through all of those. If you do want to skip the queue from the question box, then just raise your hand and I will actually come to you and unmute you so you can speak to the guys and ask your own question, which is always a bit more fun. So in terms of what we're doing with Alan and Overy, it's really exciting. We're doing 7 webinars. We did one last week, like I mentioned. This week, again, I really want us to look into the different types of roles that are in the company. So it really gives you a great understanding. If you want to go and be a lawyer at A&O, great. You understand how the company really works across not just the lawyer roles. If you're interested in different departments and different companies, this also gives you an insight into a big city firm and what sort of roles and responsibilities happen within it. Alan and Overy is one of the big law firms. You can see there are 40 offices around the world, many employees. Lots of lawyers as well, but interestingly, 2,300 lawyers, whereas 5,400 employees. So I think that's what we'll be focusing on today in terms of what the rest really makes up in terms of Alan and Overy employees and 550 partners at the top of the business. Sue, just to hand over to you in terms of your role and I suppose what you get up to at A&O and what this means to you, what we're doing today.
Thanks, Chris. So hi guys, so I'm Sue Wisby, and for those of you that weren't on the webinar last week, just a little bit about me. So I've worked at Alan and Overy now for over 35 years in various roles. I didn't go to university, but I have worked my way up through the company, and I now work in the community investment team. So what does that actually mean? So as an organisation, we believe strongly about supporting local communities, and we have a focus on increasing access to justice and increasing access to education and employment. And my role within A&O is to liaise with schools and charities and organisations like Pathways CTM to try and address any imbalance in society in those areas. So day to day, I manage a number of programs, and these programs could be working with children in primary schools, in secondary schools or students in higher education. And the overall objective of all the programs we run is to help young people fulfill their potential regardless of your background. You'll see on our website, if anyone's been on our website, that there are a number of programs that we run, and at the end of these slides there'll be a couple of links to our site where you can read a bit more about what it is that we do and why we do it. And one program you might be interested in if you're in year 10 or 11 is our annual work experience program, Smart Start, which is aimed at year 12s. So take a look at that and see if that would be of interest and how and when you can apply. The students that are in year 12 at the moment and have been selected to come on the programme, we are working with some other organisations to try and move that work experience online. So if anyone's on this call, you'll know all about that as well. So that's a little bit about me, but if anyone's got any questions, let us know during the call. I'll hand back to Chris. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sue. Thanks so much. Okay, good stuff. So let's meet our panelists. I'm going to start with handing over to Emily, please. Emily.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so I'm Emily. My job title is HR Specialist. So for those of you who don't know what HR stands for, that's Human Resources. And Human Resources are essentially they look after the management of the people of the business. So there are many different specialisms within HR. You can specialize in recruitment, you can specialize in payroll. I'm actually an HR generalist, so I work very closely with the people in the business to manage our people on a day-to-day basis. So dealing with lots of different issues that come up, and managing difficult people and difficult things that come up, and I'll come on to those in the next part of the presentation. But just to give you a bit of an insight into my journey and how I got to where I am now. So I did A-levels in English, history and music, and then went on to do a degree in music, because that was something I was very passionate about, but always knew that I actually didn't want to end up having a career in music, because if you want to do that, you either go into performance, or you go into teaching, or you go into music therapy, and none of those things really interested me. So I then stayed on at university for an extra year and did a master's in international business management. Bit random, you might think, but happened. And during my master's degree, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be honest. Someone suggested to me that I might be good at HR, so I looked it up. I'd never heard of it before, and I thought, oh, actually, that is really interesting. And what appealed to me was all the different elements to it, and the people interaction part, which I get to do on a day-to-day basis. So I then left university. And found it very difficult to actually get into HR at first. It's difficult to get into if you don't have any experience. And I tried for months to get that experience, and eventually managed to get my foot into the door with an HR assistant role in a much smaller firm than the one I'm working at now. And yeah, so I spent 2 years as an assistant there. And whilst I was an assistant, I then started doing my HR qualification, which is called a CIPD. So I studied for that, and that took me 2 years studying part-time. I then, whilst working, and then I moved and got another job at a slightly law firm. And I was there for a year and a bit, and then decided that I wanted to work for an even bigger law firm. That's where I am now. And yeah, I'll come on to being me about HR in a minute. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Emily. I think you were lagging a little bit at the end, but we got everything. Really good introduction. Thank you. Teresa, over to you.
Hi, I'm a business analyst in the finance department. I've been with A&O for 20 years, but I started I did my A-levels at school, didn't get the grades I needed to go off to university, so found a job in a finance department in a chemical company, and over the years have moved from one company to another in the finance department, producing invoices, running reports. When I moved to A&O, I moved away from actually doing the processing into a support role. So I worked with a small team, and we were the people that if someone's bill didn't add up or someone's report didn't show what they wanted, we were the people they came to correct all of that. And then about 10, 12 years ago, I moved still within A&O. So I've had lots of different sort of jobs within A&O. I moved into what is called the business analyst team within group finance. And so I've just really moved around the firm and improved my position within the firm off of the things that I know and the work that I do.
So Teresa, you didn't go to university, is that right?
Yeah, no, I didn't go to university.
Cool, okay, good stuff. Thanks so much, Teresa. Lizzie, over to you in events.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much for joining. So I'm Lizzie, I sit in the central events team. Some people call us the global events team as well, because London's the HQ office. So we sit centrally, working across all the different firm, all the different practice groups, organising a mixture of internal events and client events. So we can get involved with organising small conferences or client seminars for 50 people, up to large grand creative dinners, 300, 400 people. And some of our events, our Global Partners Conference is the full 550 partners meeting in a destination for a week, doing conferences and evening dinners. So we're responsible for organising all of that. I always kind of considered myself very lucky because I knew I always wanted to go into events. I think business management was always something I wanted to go down, but I'm quite creative, I'm quite organised. So I was at quite a young age when I realised events is actually the route I wanted to go down. I was very lucky. I spent a lot of my summer holidays at school and university holidays building up my CV, doing a lot of work experience, working at local venues, local museums, working for small agencies. So I spent my summer holidays building up my CV. And then I studied events management at university. A lot of people question, people don't know that that's actually a degree, but it is. Events is a huge industry. You can go into sports, charity, festivals, music, huge amount. But I always knew I wanted to go down the corporate in-house route, kind of sticking in with the business management side, but still using my creativity and organisation. So I consider myself quite lucky to know that's always the route I wanted to go down.
Lizzie, how come you knew this all along? And was it for your work experience that you just knew, oh, I really love this?
I think that's what it was. I think in year 9 we had to do some sort of work experience, and I think it was my mum who said to me, you're very creative, you're very organised, you like doing this, why don't you look into doing something, working at a local museum? And ever since that I then got involved with organising, school things, sixth form, camp, that sort of thing. And when I found out that you could do a degree in it, it was definitely what I wanted to do.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lizzie. Really detailed. Thanks so much. Thomas, over to you.
Yeah, so as you say, I'm Tom. I'm a senior consultant, and I'll come on to what that means, I guess, a little later on in Overy Consulting, which is a side business to the general legal practice. I've been with the firm for about 4 months, and I guess the journey there was fairly typical in terms of I did A-levels where I found I actually didn't like law, so I went down more the business route. I did business and accounting at university. I then actually didn't know really what I wanted to do, unlike Lizzie, so I decided to do a little bit of everything, so move into consulting. So I knew I liked business, I knew I liked finance. I joined a couple of different consulting firms and worked across banks, normally on periods of like 6 to 9 months to try and figure out the institution, figure out what we're supposed to do and provide some value to the client. Did that for about 6 years. And what I figured out is that I like doing a lot of different things rather than one particular thing. So I decided to continue and join Alan and Overy to try and get that variety and the client interaction. So yeah, that's myself.
Brilliant, thanks Tom. And then finally, before we go into thinking about different questions from the students, over to Imogen.
Hi there, hello everyone, thanks for joining. Well, I joined A&O on a 2-day temp booking. This month, that was 18 years ago. Wow. I don't quite know how that happened, but it's been lovely working here. So, you know, I've stayed. I work in the risk function, and what that means day to day is that we look at all new business that's coming into the firm. So every single bit of work that the business does comes through our team. It's checked. Does it conflict, go against something that's already happening around the firm? Is there any kind of reputational risk for acting for a particular company? Some companies have bad reputations. We might not want to be associated with them. So that's what I do, is I check new business, and I can tell you a little bit more about that later. I did go to university. I initially wanted to be a pilot, but unfortunately due to eyesight issues, as you can see, OS specs, that was not to be. But I'm good at being organised and good at detail and good at sorting things out. So when the department was being set up back in 2003, I thought that sounded interesting. So I applied to go in. I've been there ever since. I work flexibly. I do 3 days a week in school holidays and 4 days a week in term time, because I have a daughter, and I volunteer at her school normally on a Wednesday during normal times. And so it's nice to work for a firm that allows me to have that flexibility and balance and to work part-time. So that's me. Hi.
And Imogen, just a quick question actually. You say you're good at detail. When did you know you're good at detail? Was that something you knew as a student, or did you learn it throughout your career?
Both really. I did French as one of my A-levels. I did English, French, sociology and general studies, which was compulsory in those days, quite a long time ago now. You know, with getting subject agreements and accents and stuff in languages and things like that, that was something that always sort of, you know, I wanted to get right and interested me. And actually, while I was on maternity leave with my daughter, I did Italian GCSE, because A&O has a couple of offices in Italy, and I thought it'd be quite useful to be able to understand some of the documents that were coming through to us sometimes in Italian, rather than having to send them off for translation, to be able to actually read it myself and get the gist.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Imogen. Good. So that's the introduction from our panelists, guys. Lots of different areas there that we can delve into. Potentially some interest to you guys who are on the webinar. So the next challenge really is to think about any questions you might have for any of the panelists. What we're going to do now, we're just going to structure the questions as you can see on the page. And then if you're interested in asking Emily anything about HR, put it in the Q&A box now, or raise your hand and I'll let you ask Emily any questions. So just thinking about what you're interested in terms of what questions you might want to ask. Over to Emily, really. So how does your role play a part in the A&O mission?
Okay, so as I said, HR is all about working with and managing people. And people are the most important asset to the business. And obviously we're a law firm, so we need to make sure that we keep our lawyers. Obviously we have HR teams that manage other functions within the business, and we even have an HR team who work for HR and manage HR, if you can believe it. But the business is a law firm, so my job is to make sure that we keep the best lawyers, and we call them talent. So my role is crucial in working with the business to identify the most talented lawyers, and then to support them, develop them and train them to ensure that we keep them and to ensure that we drive the business forward. So that's how I play a part in the A&O mission, I would say. So what does the typical day look like for me? So I think, like most people, I would start the day going through my emails and responding to those which are, I would say, are just quick queries. So for example, this morning I had someone asking me whether they could book a day off to move house. I said, well, yes, you know, A&O has a policy which says, yeah, you're entitled to a day off every 2 years for moving house specifically. You don't have to use your annual leave for that. Or I'll have a question from a partner who's asking, have I heard from so and so who's been off sick now for 4 or 5 days? They haven't heard from him. Have I heard from him? Can I check in with him? So yeah, so just quick queries at first. Just an idea of some other things that I might be doing in the day. So I will always meet with any new joiners that we have in any of the legal teams that I support. So say a new lawyer joins the team, I'll meet with them in the first 2 weeks of them being at the firm, and I will check that everything's going okay. I will talk them through some of the policies that we have at the firm to make sure that they're aware of where they are, where to find them. I'll kind of point them in the direction of some key people, and talk them through some different areas of training that we can offer them at various points in their career, and mainly just sort of introduce myself and know that and make it known to them that I'm a point of contact for them if they have any queries. So, you know, we have lots of lawyers who somewhere down the line perhaps are dealing with stress issues or you know, things that they don't want to go and talk to their partners or their managers about, but they might want to come and talk to me about, because that's an area that I specialize in, and I know where I can go and assist them. So yeah, so I'll also have other meetings with the partners and the senior lawyers to talk through the other lawyers and their teams, the more junior lawyers, and talk through who we think is talent and who we think should be developed and pushed to make sure that we get the most out of them. Most recently, I've been in meetings where I've been discussing people's bonuses. So alongside talking about who's talent, we talk about, you know, who's performed particularly well and who's gone above and beyond their day jobs, and you know, how much of the bonus pot that we've got do we think that they should be awarded. And I think those kind of meetings are really interesting to me, because there's so much thought that goes behind a particular sum of money that is awarded to someone as their bonus. And I don't think people really realise that when they receive their bonus, how much thought has gone into the amount that they've received.
That's Emily, just before the final point, actually,
yeah,
I just got a few questions coming through. Really interesting, by the way. I bet being in that room is so interesting, what you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
From Sultan, what is the highest achieving role in HR, and what responsibilities does it entail? Being interested in HR, what steps should I take now to gain more experience?
So did you say the highest?
The highest achieving role in HR, like what's the top, and what responsibilities does that entail?
Okay, sorry, there's something going past my window. I'll just let it.
No problem.
Yeah, it's a road cleaner, great. So the highest level of HR would be an HR director. At Overy, we have a global HR director who works across all of the countries that we operate in. So she's incredibly senior, and she works with our most senior partners in the business. And she has a very, very interesting job. But there are...
Oh, sorry, yeah.
No, carry on.
I was just saying, being interested in HR, what steps would you suggest to take to get more experience?
I would say if you can, get an administrative role anywhere, that as just a starting place. I mean, getting into HR, if you can you can actually get HR apprenticeships. There are HR graduate roles with so many different companies, and because HR is needed in any business, there are a lot of roles out there. But I would start by getting administrative experience in any role at all, actually, before you then go into specialising in HR.
Brilliant. Okay, and a couple more questions. We've got to fire through these. Mm-hmm. Does your role require a lot of sitting in an office, or do you go out and about?
A bit of both. So actually, it's interesting. That's an interesting question for the time being, because quite a lot of my day at the moment is spent talking over WebEx or webinars, or having meetings with people over WebEx. So I would say 50% of my day is at my desk, and the other 50% of my day is meetings and talking to people. I also get to interview some of our future lawyers, which I find like really interesting, and that's something as well that I've been doing over WebEx since we've all been working from home.
That's so interesting. And from Yavi, hi Emily, I'll be studying English at university this September. If I would like to work in HR, can I do so with just my English degree, or is it advisable to do a master's in HR related field?
I would, well, so I did a master's in business, but you don't have to. I would, actually, I would get into the career straight after doing my degree. So you could actually get a graduate job after completing your degree in English, which is a great degree to do actually, if you want to go into HR, because it involves a lot of writing. I would get an HR graduate job or apply for them whilst you're at university. And then if you get an HR graduate job, the company that you then start with tend to put you through the HR qualifications when you join with them. And they often then fund the HR qualifications that you need.
Amazing. Emily, I'm going to move on in a second, and there are a couple more questions you might want to type the answer to, but just finally, what advice would you give to a young person potentially wanting to get into HR, I suppose? What's your answer there?
Wanting to get into HR? I would, I kind of prepared the answer to this question in the way that advice for a young person just wanting to
more generally, that's brilliant.
It is just because I hadn't even heard about HR until, as I said, I was doing my master's. I would just do as much research as you can into all the different careers that are out there, because actually it's not until you get into the workplace that you actually know what is out there. And I wish I'd had, I'm not saying that I don't enjoy my job at the moment, because I really do. But I just wish I'd known a bit more about what was out there. So just find out as much as you can, and get as much insight as you can. And obviously this is a really great opportunity today as a starting point.
Thanks, Emily. I'm sure we'll come back to you soon. Teresa, over to you, please, in finance.
Okay, well, the A&O mission statement involved in the most advanced law firm. And that is where the team I work for does come into play, because what we do is we look at the system we use and the processes, and we try to improve those either by changing of work practices or by building different processes or improving the processes that the system that we use has in it. So my day-to-day work is always changing. I'm in a team of 6 people, and we support the finance department and the rest of A&O. But within finance, we also have a group that are functional analysts, and they're the first port of call when someone has a problem. So the functional analysts will take a call and work on it. And if they can't resolve it, they would then pass it over to one of the business analysts. And so we work on a weekly rota. So some weeks, if I'm their contact point, my whole week would be taken up with investigating problems. Whereas another week, I could just be working on how we want to change a process. So I'd work with our developers who are still within the finance department about adding extra fields into the finance system so that we can record extra data, or changing the way a process works. We are a very, I want to say, self-sufficient firm as far as the finance system is concerned. It is a global system that is used by everyone at A&O. And so a fee earner in New York will enter time, but someone out of the Hong Kong office could actually be raising the bill to send that bill out to a client.
And Teresa, just on that point, is that how it works? So if I'm a lawyer and I'm going on a job, it's all measured in units of time. Is that how you make your money? Does that?
Yeah. We call your day in 6 minutes units. And so whatever you're doing, if you're creating documents or if you're reading contracts or if you're at meetings, you record your hours. And then at the end of the month, we run reports on each matter, and then the bill is produced. So each partner whole controls certain matters, and that partner has what we call a revenue controller who works with them. So the revenue controller pulls together the information of all time and all disbursements that have been created against that matter. And then with the aid of the VA, everything has to have a narrative, so the narratives are checked, and then the partner agrees what he wants to charge the client, and the revenue controller goes into the system and
Teresa, your Wi-Fi is lagging a little bit, so if it's okay, I'll come back to you for your advice to a young person in a second. Is that okay?
Yeah, fine.
I'll come back in a second. So I'm going to move on to events, which is Lizzie, I believe. Yeah, Lizzie, please.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, so my day-to-day role, I mean, no day's really the same when you're in events. We're working across so many different events all the time, so all at different time frames. Sorry, I can't hear any. I'm really sorry.
No, don't worry.
So yeah, we work across so many different events. So a day-to-day role could be meeting a partner to kick off an event, to find out why they want to hold this particular event. A lot of our partners are very invested in the client events that we organise for our clients. They can get really creative themselves. It's slightly different to their normal day-to-day work. So yeah, our day can be kicking off an event, finding venues, negotiating contracts, looking at suppliers, working with caterers, florists, all that type of thing. We can be looking for venues across Europe and further afield. Last year I organised an offsite in Bali, and I was in Singapore for a bit. I've done events in Dubai and the States. So a lot of travel is involved. Which is great because that's a big perk for me, I think. But then a lot of the day can also be wrapping up events, looking at the feedback survey, looking at what we can do to improve next year. Yeah, lots of different timescales and different deadlines you work with every day.
That's amazing. Lizzie, you mentioned the event with partners that happens, is it for a whole week? That must be pretty exciting to get behind.
Yeah, yes, that's every 2 years we organise our Global Partners Conference. Sadly, it was supposed to take place in about 3 weeks actually in Miami. We've had to cancel that with everything going on. And I'd be lying if I didn't say the COVID-19 has affected our events calendar hugely. We've had to cancel a huge amount of our events for the rest of the year. We're monitoring it on a very close basis, and we're hoping that we can start organising events again early next year, but you know, we're just waiting to find out.
And a question here from Overy, good question. What would client events involve?
Yeah, so a huge mixture. We do some seminars where clients come into the office and we do small conferences for them at breakfast. We have a panel of speakers, quite similar to this, ranging to evening events where we could, you know, take over a gallery or a unique venue. Last year we worked in the National Portrait Gallery, in Kensington Palace, in the Science Museum, Tate Modern, Tate Britain. We can do private hires of exhibitions. We can do sporting and hospitality events, Wimbledon, Wembley, arts events. We do a huge amount of client events. That's where we can definitely be more creative. Yeah, it's all about being kind of ahead of our competitors and offering our clients, you know, a real special experience.
Alicia's asked, what would you say is the best part of your job?
I love all of it, but I have to say the travel is a big thing for me. I love being able to travel across the world and work in all of our different offices. Yeah, I think that's probably the best part.
Brilliant. It does sound quite exciting, Lizzie. What about your advice to young people?
I think, yeah, very similar to what Emily said, just do your research early on, have a look at the huge amount of industries out there, whether it's, events marketing. We sit within the marketing function, which comes under PR, comms, internal comms, digital marketing, website creation. There's so much under marketing and events and everything, there's a huge amount of scope. So yeah, just do your research and build up your CV as much as you can, whether it's voluntary or paid work. Get your CV really meaty before uni, and then carry on building it up throughout university as well, if that's the route you want to go down.
It's just great to hear all this, guys. And if you want to apply to be a lawyer at A&O or any other role, it's great that you know this information. But remember, students, take that information to whatever job you end up applying to, is digging down into the detail. Lots of companies have so much stuff like this that goes on. It just really helps to your business acumen in terms of the stuff we're hearing, I think, at the moment. One more question, sorry, Lizzie. There's a really good one from Julia. When events aren't able to happen, like the situation with COVID, does it drastically affect the company?
Well, I don't know if it drastically affects the company, but certainly it has affected our team hugely. We were very busy cancelling everything, but now everything has turned virtually, similar to this webinar. So we are still doing a huge amount of client webinars and calls and events all online, which is really unusual for us, because a part of our role is offering the kind of face-to-face interaction. I don't think, you can communicate as good online as you can in a face-to-face event. So it has definitely affected and changed our team. I think the events industry is also going to be hugely affected because of this. But, when we're all out the other side, I know people are going to want that face-to-face interaction, and our partners and lawyers are definitely going to want to meet their clients.
Definitely. Great. Thank you so much, Lizzie. Great questions, guys. Teresa, I'll just quickly come back to you for your advice for young people, to give you that opportunity.
I think the thing that I would always say is study what you enjoy, not necessarily what you think you need to study to get to the end goal. Lots of our lawyers never studied law, not at university. They took the subjects that they enjoyed and did that first. I think that's the real thing. If you don't enjoy something, you're not going to do your best and you won't put in the effort. Whereas if it's something that you enjoy or you're interested in, you've got more chance of succeeding to a greater extent.
Teresa, I'm so pleased I came back to you. That's brilliant advice. And I think Emily mentioned that, her passion was music and she went to study at university, and now she's ended up in a role that she loves. It's the same thing as me, actually. I went to uni to do sport, and now I'm not doing sport. I'm running a business in education. I think if you do follow your passions, guys, that's where you get excited about life and opportunities come to you. Tom, over to you in consultancy.
Yeah, so slightly different to, I think, a few of these roles so far. What we call in the firm a fee earner. So I reach out to clients and we charge for our time or our advice. Again, my clients are always changing. What I'm working on is always changing. I guess what we bring to the A&O mission is just providing good quality outputs to a client. So keeping them happy, making sure that they're on the right side of regulation, making sure that we're giving them the right advice and we're maintaining that relationship for a long time. So I guess a typical day for me, I can be working on anything at any time. So part of it is just reading the news. I'll spend half an hour a day reading articles, what's happening with our clients, what's happening with the industry in general. I'll have to do some learning every day, probably 45 minutes an hour, just on what's the latest update in a regulation. So what should firms be doing as a result of COVID? What do firms get to do? Is there relief available? Can they benefit in some other way, or should they be doing things in a certain way if everybody's working from home? What is the risk of everybody working from home? And I'll spend some time learning about my client as well. We work with fintechs, we work with banks, we work with asset managers, corporates, high street names, and I can't understand that. No one understands that. So you always have to look back, do some research, speak to some people. So I'll speak to clients, I'll do some literal Googling, I'll talk to other partners in the firm, I'll talk to our legal colleagues, and then I'll come up with a response. I'll make a report, I'll make a presentation, we'll conduct a workshop with some clients. And a lot of what we do is actually, we're a small team, so it helps us do this quite easily. We have about 20 people, and we regularly catch up amongst ourselves and say, what is everybody doing? What's everybody working on? What have we learned? What are we seeing in the industry? And that's really useful, and it's really important for what we're doing.
Tom, I just wondered, does your consultancy charge? So people are paying you money, right? You earn a fee. Does that link with the lawyer side of the business, or is it completely separate?
So we work with lawyers on projects. We work without lawyers on some projects. Sometimes a lawyer will bring us in for specialist advice with regulation. We're a mixture of lawyers, career consultants, ex-bankers. There's a few different things. And conversely, we'll have our own clients that we'll bring lawyers into, where lawyers might work with the legal department or a compliance department at a firm. We'll work with senior leadership on strategy or conduct or HR. We have a bit of a wider base, I suppose. So we're not treading on anyone's toes. We like to work together, I think.
So interesting. Guys, I wonder if you are interested in getting into becoming a lawyer, as I know some of you are, do write in the chat box if you knew about Tom's role in consultancy, because it's very interesting. Tom, does this happen across all other sort of law firms, like knowing about the consultant element? Would that help in an interview, I wonder?
So we're a bit of a unique offering at the moment, or we think ourselves are. We're a new business, about 18 months old. I've actually come from a consulting background, so Big Four consulting, financial services consulting, banking consulting. I've not seen anything like this. It's not to say it doesn't exist out there, but I think we're pretty unique.
Wow, that's amazing. And Shabazz, a good comment on LinkedIn the other week. Well done. You're back again. He's got a question for you, Tom. For a consultant, which technical skills do you think will be most desirable in the future?
So data is huge. We're coming out of a period where regulation has been the big focus. Like the financial crisis meant that there's been a huge focus on businesses doing things the right way and adhering to rules. It means that the past 10 years, basically all my career, I've been implementing regulations for firms. So what they should be doing, how they should be doing it. I think we're coming out of that, and then firms are thinking by themselves, how can we use the information that we have better? How do we actually improve our business without someone telling us to? And data and technology is looking to be huge for that. And that's not just coding, that's not just programming. It's how do we manage the data we have? How do we govern that we're doing the right thing with our data and that we're not crossing any boundaries here? So there's a few aspects to it.
Thanks, Tom. Another question. Do you need a finance-based degree to work as a consultant?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think very little of what I do is actually based around finance. It helps to understand the cogs of how an organization works. But as I say, we work with corporates, we work with banks, we work with fintechs. Fintechs don't like to think themselves as banks. So if you can speak the language a little bit, great. But most of the people in my team either did law or philosophy or something else. I'm kind of an outlier in terms of a business background.
And did you went to uni, you say, Tom?
I did, yeah. So I did an accounting degree. So
that's fine.
It's not quite what I did either, but yeah.
Okay, interesting. For Tom, another question, popular Tom. What educational backgrounds do people usually have or need to enter into consultancy? I suppose we just covered that, but anything else to add on to that?
So if we're talking outside of academics, where I think you can basically have anything, like Teresa said, like you don't need a law background or a business background, I would look into professional qualifications around business analysis and project management. Project management is huge in kind of what a lot of consultancies do. Yeah, I'd probably have a look at project management, and that's something you can do in your own time even. There's things like Prince 2 or other qualifications.
Really interesting. And finally, your advice for young people, Tom?
I think you can do all the research in the world, but you may end up in something that you think is completely different. So I think it's just be a bit flexible, especially at the start of your career. See how many things you can actually look at and go outside of your role. You might land in your first graduate spot or your apprenticeship spot. I would look and just have a talk with people around the organization. We do something really good at A&O in that when I joined the firm, I spoke to a lawyer from each department. HR reached out, like Emily said, just to explain what they do and how we might work together. That's, I think, really useful, and it actually piques some interest as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tom. Really interesting. I'm going to hand over to Imogen now, please. Imogen. Oh, Imogen, you're on mute. Sorry. Just going to unmute you. Just bear with me. Imogen. You might need to do it yourself. There we go. We got you back.
Okay. Sorry, slight technical issue.
No worries. Thanks for waiting.
No problem. So a typical day for me in risk would be, first of all, catching up with queries from the previous day, similar to what Emily was talking about, you know, just catching up with a few emails. There might be follow-up queries, there might be answers to questions that I'd raised on things, and then starting to sort of get to grips with the new work that's coming in. So every single new piece of work that A&O does comes through our team. And over the years, I've worked on some really interesting stuff that's ended up on the front page of newspapers and has been quite fascinating. The first thing I worked on at A&O years and years and years ago was the building of the new Wembley Stadium. So when you work on stuff that's kind of like known and is in the news, that's interesting. And one thing that I really like about my job is that every day I'm working on something different. You know, there's usually a really broad mix of work. At the moment, because of what's going on, at the moment, a lot of my workload has been looking at different airlines and the issues that they're facing, and they're coming to us for advice sometimes, or companies that lease planes to airlines are asking us. So, you know, we've had quite a lot of aviation focused work because of the situation. So one of the main things I think is to just be interested, you know, and do lots of research. A lot of the time I spend is looking at all of the broader issues around a sector, as well as the reports of what work we've already got to work out whether there's a problem or not with taking on the new work. So I spend quite a lot of time talking to our partners and finding further detail, working out what happened with other work. Is that still ongoing? Has that stopped, leaving us free to do something that's new that's come in? So, you know, it's nice and varied. I have travelled with work before to a couple of our different offices, but nowadays parenthood means that I'm slightly less flexible on that. But I'm very, very, very lucky that I've always been allowed to work part-time since I became a mum. And it's really good to be able to work for an employer that lets you have that flexibility so that you have that work-life balance.
And is that one of the advantages of working for a big company? They can support that, I wonder, Imogen?
I think so. I mean, when the team first started out, there was only literally 3 or 4 analysts. We're a much larger team spread across 3 offices now. And as the team's grown, more of us, and we've got older, you know, more of us have become parents and we've adapted. But we're very lucky that obviously Emily's team over in HR, there's policies in place for the firm as to how all that stuff should work, which then has meant that I've been very lucky and able to work.
A couple of questions for you, Imogen, from Karishma. Hi, Karishma. What is going to be the main things that you need to look out for when following coronavirus? What will be the biggest risks or red flags for you now?
Oh, that is a really, really, really good question. Several different ones, really. We have had guidance from obviously the managing partner of the firm, very, very senior. The head of our department looks over anything that's related to coronavirus. We've got special guidelines in place for dealing with matters that are related to coronavirus. Interestingly, going back to what Lizzie was saying about events, we've had some clients coming to us saying, well, that, you know, this event's been cancelled, where do we stand? You know, they're looking for help in, you know, sort of enforcing contracts or claiming against insurance policies or things like that. So it could be any one of a multitude of issues that the client's asking for help on. So we have to look at those extra specially carefully.
Brilliant. And any advice to young people, Imogen, before we go on to more questions for everybody?
I think 2 things really. First of all, be enthusiastic, be interested, and show that you are. You know, be smiley, be helpful, ask lots of questions, think about, you know, how you can kind of go the extra mile and make sure that everything's done nicely and properly. And secondly, echoing exactly what Teresa said, study something that interests you. I did English for my degree, and the written skills that I learned from that, I was quite lucky. My uni did a session on like writing for business and stuff like that. There's a whole module on it. You know, those written skills for when you're having to write reports, carry out research and frame that so that it's relevant to the query that you've been asked. All of those skills have actually been really useful in my job. Reading lots of lovely books for my degree was lovely and meant that I enjoyed doing it, but I also got some transferable skills out of it.
It's brilliant. Thanks, Imogen. So we've got 10 minutes left, guys. I want to ask a few quick fire questions. This is actually to everyone. It's a really good question. So really top line, if that's okay. This is to everyone. What has been some of your key career defining moments for you, for everybody, just out of curiosity? So career defining moments in a sentence, if you can. Who wants to go first?
Oh, crikey.
Tough one. Good question.
By career defining, are we talking about sort of some highlights?
I guess what helped you get to where you are now? What was it? An interview that you nailed? Was it bumping into someone at a pub to network with? I wonder.
I think that just generally, there's not one life like event that I would refer to, but there's something like about doing something kind of scary. I think you develop more from, like, even if it was like this, like going speaking to 50 people or going to an interview by yourself or talking to some really senior colleagues. Like, you might think it's scary and you want some support, but actually by signing up to do it, you put the work in, you get prepared, and you develop really quickly as a result of it. I think like doing that sort of thing is really useful.
Go for it, Emily.
Yeah, I agree. I was always really nervous before going in. Well, I always thought that I wouldn't be very good at interviews, as in like actually not taking interviews, which I do now, but actually like going to interviews for jobs. When I came out of university, I was always so nervous and thought I would be absolutely rubbish at it. But learned that actually once you get into an interview situation, that you're so much better than you think you will be. And the more interview experience that you get, the better that you get, and the more confident that you get. So even if you don't get the first role that you interview for, so what? Like, just keep doing interviews and you will get a job, because you will just keep improving your interview technique.
That's really interesting, actually. Guys, like, did you all get nervous at interview? Lizzie, coming to you, like, is it something that everybody gets? We're all nervous, even though you all look quite successful at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, this kind of follows on to the question before as well. I applied for a placement midway through uni. I know I always wanted to move to London, but this placement came up and it was in Sussex, kind of near Gatwick. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want this job. But I went for the interview. I was really nervous. It was my first one. And I ended up getting it. And I was thinking, oh, but I always knew I wanted to move to London. I don't know if I wanted to move to Sussex or Brighton. But I went ahead, and that was a bit of a big step for me because I didn't know anyone there. But I went ahead and I started the placement and I loved it. Lived in Brighton for a bit, and I know that was just such a big leap of faith, but my CV got so, big from that. I've managed to get so much experience just from really taking that risk. And yeah, from there I then went on to get more experience. So yeah, I think it is taking that risk, but definitely for interviews. I used to get really nervous, but now I now interview people, and you can kind of see how nervous people can get. It's all about being put at ease and that sort of thing. But yeah.
And Lizzie, I've just got a quick question from Karishma here saying, do you think travel will be replaced with virtual meetings and events long term?
I think a lot of companies are going to really question whether travel is necessary. Yeah, I think the whole ESG piece as well, stopping carbon emissions and that sort of thing. I think a lot of people have realised you don't need to get on a plane for a few hour meeting. You can do it over Zoom and WebEx and that sort of thing. So I think virtual events is definitely going to be the way forward for the foreseeable future. But I know, like I said earlier, I think face-to-face interaction is so important. But yeah, I think travel is going to be affected. I think people are going to be travelling a lot less.
And it's really interesting. Teresa, from your role, I suppose, with finance, could you do that working from home? And do you think that you'll be one of the last to go back to work because you don't have to go back? Will this change your working environment, COVID?
From my point of view, as a personal thing, I've always sort of put off work from home. I've made a conscious effort not to have an office in-house. Work is work and home is home. And because of the environment we're in, I've had to make that change. Actually, I'm quite enjoying it now. And so maybe because most of my stuff can be done out of the office,
Teresa,
there are
sorry.
some things.
Sorry, Teresa, it's just the line's really bad, unfortunately. Just want to check your Wi-Fi there.
I'll just follow up on what Teresa was saying and say that with my flexible working arrangement, I was already working 2 days a week from home. So you can have a balance and have a mix. You know, I was doing 2 days in the office, 2 days from home. At the moment, it's all from home. But you know, it's nice to have some time, especially if you have a long commuting journey. It's nice to have some days where you're not on the trains, but at the same time, a couple of days a week where you are in the office and seeing colleagues and having those kind of chats over a cup of tea and, you know, looking at stuff together. And I think that there's more team bonding, chit chat, sort of, you know, developing relationships with colleagues when it's face to face. Same as what Lizzie was saying earlier, face to face, the communication is different to how it is across Zoom.
Brilliant. And Emily, a question for you, I think, in HR. What are some key interview tips and techniques you would recommend for graduates? Put you on the spot.
I think the key one is that I do actually do quite a lot of graduate interviewing, so it's interesting. I said the key one is to do thorough research on the company that you're going to the interview for. You'd be surprised at how many people haven't done their research, and you dig a bit deeper and ask them why they've applied to the role and what attracts them to the firm, and they give pretty poor answers. So that's key for sure. And secondly, I think I'm so impressed by people who manage to stay really composed in interviews, and who manage to relax. And it's actually the interviewer's job to make you relax. So the interviewer should be trying to make you relax. So just, you know, relax as much as you can and be yourself as much as you can, because it's very obvious when you're trying to be someone that you're not. So yeah, I would say try and remain composed and do your research.
Great advice. And Emily, I'll come to you again. And Lizzie, I know you said that you do interviews. From Zoe, I'm just asking, what things do you look for when interviewing, and do you have any top tips? Emily, what things do you look for, just really quickly?
Definitely passion and interest in the role. That's key. Yeah.
Brilliant. Lizzie?
Yeah, enthusiasm and preparation. Preparation to know about the firm, and to really be yourself. You know, be confident in your own abilities and come across with your posture and your body language and your eye contact. I think that's so important. Yeah. Anybody
else? Any top tips? No, that's absolutely fine, guys. I'm just conscious of the time. Could you please put in the chat box what you've got from this session, how you found it? I'm really hoping people who are looking to maybe apply to A&O, this really helps you broaden what happens at the company. At the same time, those students who are thinking about different areas and different passions you might be interested in, to see what maybe new careers that you might have discovered and learning a bit more about those. And also anything in terms of the session and how we can always improve it is always brilliant. In the chat box, please, in terms of what you got from the session. I just want to hand over to everyone just really quickly, top line, just to potentially say any last words from you. If I start from the top, Lizzie, starting from you.
Sorry, what a message to?
Just message to students really, and how you found the session and your close off.
Yeah, I think this has been really great, and you're definitely doing the right thing by proactively joining webinars like this, learning more about all the different departments that put together such a big firm like A&O. I think, if I would recommend, if anyone is organised or creative and is into communication, to definitely look down the marketing route as well. If you want to work in the legal sector, but maybe law's not your thing, there is a huge amount of scope for so many different personalities and skills.
Brilliant, thanks so much. And Teresa, just a quick sign off from you. Hopefully your Wi-Fi's back.
Sorry, as I said before, whatever you want to study, whatever you're going to study, make sure it's things that you actually are interested in.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Teresa. Emily, then Tom, then Imogen.
I would say, first of all, well done for being interested at this stage in your studies. I wish with hindsight that I'd been as interested as you guys are when I was a bit younger. Not that it's really held me back, but it's so great that you're doing your research early. I would also say, don't worry if you don't know what you want to do. Carry on doing that research and get as much experience as you can. Any experience is useful experience.
Amazing. Thanks, Emily. Tom?
Not a huge amount else, really. I think just keep talking to people. Come to the next sessions, obviously, Chris. That's my key takeaway.
Good stuff. And Imogen, anything to add?
I just wanted to say that the students that are joining in today are obviously doing a fantastic job at keeping their learning going from home. I know that this is a really challenging time for students of all ages, and so the fact that you're joining in with sessions like this is just fantastic, and I hope that they've been useful, they've been interesting. There's lots and lots of resources out there, so do make use of all of it. It might not be being delivered face to face with your teachers in the normal way, but there's lots and lots of support out there for you, so do make use of it.
Thanks, Imogen, and good comments in the box. Shabazz saying, thanks guys, really enjoyed the session and appreciate all your time. So do we. Wezzy, key takeaway, always keep reading and stay interested in my passion. Holly, I didn't realize how broad the opportunities were in law firms in respect to the range of roles and how it's not limited to the traditional route of education. Arub, thank you for hosting the webinar. It was interesting to learn about consultancy and events as I hadn't known much about them before. Oh, beg your pardon guys, I've got one more poll to quickly share with you. So has anyone got to go at 3? A&O final poll. Just going to quickly launch that poll, guys, just to see who might have inspired you the most today. Ellen, I found the advice about interviews really helpful and have taken away that, so I should know what to do and rather than to focus on what I rather enjoy rather than, sorry, I've messed that up. Have taken away that I should do what I enjoy rather than what I think I need. There we go. Well said. Alana, it has really opened up my eyes to different types of careers within a city firm and how important it is to be passionate about when you go into the interview. That's brilliant from Alana. I'll probably stop reading because I think I'm fluffing my lines now, but there's some fantastic comments there in the chat box, guys. Next week, we've got another session with A&O, looking beyond, and we'll be interviewing different people from different departments there, which will be really exciting. Sue, I'm not sure if you want to give anything away for that yet or not. Sorry, Sue, just unmuting you. Oh.
It's all right.
Sorry, Sue, I'll put you on the spot there, but anything to comment on for next week or not? It's up to you.
I think everyone needs to sign in next week to hear from our new panellists, but it'll again be focusing on non-legal. But we are having some trainees join us the week after that. So anyone with legal interest, please sign in for that one as well.
Brilliant, thanks Sue, keeping you guys guessing. And I must just say, we're doing that Instagram live on Friday, so do follow us on Instagram and do come back next week for that session. By the way, in terms of who maybe won the session today, just a bit of fun, which department has inspired you the most today? HR just clipped it from events, so well done Emily, you win today. I'm only joking, but thanks so much to our panelists. Well done students for turning up. Hopefully see some of you on tomorrow, maybe at Friday, and definitely next week for the A&O webinar. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thanks so much for your time. See ya.